Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. You all know this council and the county executive have been unanimously committed to the Purple Line for quite a long time. The project is really critical to our state's economy and to the quality of life of our residents. It's central to meeting our economic development goals, to connecting our thriving urban downtowns. It's critical to meeting our climate commitments and our racial equity goals and many other policy priorities. And that's why it's enjoyed the unanimous support of this council for so long. And before before the state made the commitment to it, it was the number one priority on our priorities letter. So I know all of us here today are very frustrated by the court action and the place the state finds itself in after so much energy and effort has gone into providing this project. And we're really eager, Administrator Quinn, to hearing you talk about the path forward. I'm grateful to you for the conversation we had on Sunday, for you making yourself available. It helped me understand. I'm sure I'll probably repeat a lot of those questions today for the benefit of my colleagues and the public. Personally, I started advocating for the Purple Line with Harry Sanders and Ben Ross and others over 20 years ago under Governor Glendening. So it feels like a real blow to be where we are, but I don't want to dwell on that. I realize many of the actions that got us to this place are outside your control. The lawsuits, the actions of Judge Leon, the position of CSX, but many things are also hard to understand, especially how when as Judge Geller made clear, if the contract was so clear that any delays of over a year give either party grounds to leave the contract, why those at least two areas of dispute were allowed to fester for so long under Secretary Ron. So I'm eager to not dwell on the past, but hear about your aspirations for the path forward and your reflections on how we got here and how we're going to avoid any of those problems in the future. So let me just turn it over to you, and then we'll get to questions, I guess.
Well, let me ask before we do that. First off, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollock and Mr. Conklin, thank you for being here as well. But I know that you all always are under a time frame, a time constraint. So what up front, how long can you be with us today?
We have until around 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Okay. Then we will we will honor that commitment. And with that, council member, well, we're going to hear from you, and then we're going to hear from the council members afterwards. So please, thank you for being here.
Okay. Well, great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. So I am Kevin Quinn. I'm the MDOT MTA administrator. I'm joined today by Matt Pollock, our project director for the Purple Line. And Secretary Slater is unfortunately able to join. Something came up at the last minute, just totally out of his control, and he does send his sincere apologies. He did want to be here and had this very much on his schedule, and things come up. So for today's meeting, I do want to address two main items. One is kind of the status of the current litigation, and two is kind of where we sit from a project delivery standpoint. So in terms of the litigation piece, the whole strategy of it, Secretary Slater always does a good job giving kind of disclaimers, and I'll kind of follow his lead that there's not a ton I can really get into. And so just understand that those legal questions on the advice of counsel, I'm not able so much to elaborate on. However, I can say that, last Thursday, the Circuit Court of Baltimore City issued a ruling that effectively denied the state's request to have the court order the concessionaire to keep working until it completes the dispute resolution process. There's a lot longer way to go on the litigation side, and our focus right now is to really let the attorneys, let the lawyers kind of handle that. My background is in transit planning, and I'm not going to pretend to be an attorney. I'm a transit guy, and my priority and Matt's priority right now is focused on delivering this project for the residents of Montgomery and Prince George's counties. And so, simply put, while we disagree with the concessionaire's assertions, we're not going to let their claims and things distract us from getting this job done. So know that is our focus and that is our commitment. On the project delivery side, as we work to continue construction, we're going to be coordinating with the concessionaire to make a transition of work really as smooth as possible. We're also going to make it our top priority to maintain a safe and efficient construction that really moves this project forward. I've spoken with many of you, and I understand your concerns and your residents' concerns about delays to this project. Right now, we have teams on the project delivery side that are meeting daily with their sleeves rolled up, working out solutions along every segment of the alignment, with a focus really on building up the state's ability to manage as much of that work as possible. That work includes some key tasks that Matt is going to be discussing further, such as our teams working with PLTP and PLTC on an orderly transition. That transition is not complete, at this time, and PLTC, who is the design build contractor for this project, is still doing some construction work on the Purple Line. We also want to focus on scoping the work moving forward, and building also both the construction side and the kind of client side teams that are going to keep this project moving forward. For me, I very much like to think of this project kind of in 3 phases. The first phase is kind of the legal phase, the attorneys piece. They're going to be working on that. I'm not going to go into all that. The second piece, probably most critical, is really the short-term management of construction and keeping construction going as much as possible. The third piece is really the long-term and the long-term process. And I'll say that is, I think, still very much in the evaluation phase, as we're kind of just out of litigation and very much evaluating our options. There's a number of long-term paths that this project could take, and each kind of has a number of kind of permutations within itself. And so I think it's too early at this point to speculate exactly what that long-term option is going to be, but we're still evaluating that. I can say that there are a number of good contractors in the market that want to take on this work. Some really good Maryland companies that want to take on this work that have reached out to us. But in the short term, again, we're focused on just that, keeping construction moving forward on this project into the winter, and really coming out with a solid long-term process underway. I want to be honest, though. I'm not going to sit here and say that there won't be stumbling blocks along the way, or make commitments that the state is going to be able to maintain that same level of activity happening that PLTC had going on in the next few weeks and the months. But I can tell you that in the long term, we are going to deliver this project for the state of Maryland, and we're going to deliver it efficiently. I want to address a couple of other items just quickly before I turn it over to Matt. Regarding settlement, the state does remain open to a fair and reasonable settlement. However, I want to note that any fair and reasonable settlement, any settlement has to be fair and reasonable, but it's also got to show that we're going to have a good partner for the next 30 years. This is a long-term commitment. This is a marriage, and we want to be sure we do have a good partner there. I know, secondly, just related to community impacts as a result of construction, there's a lot of residents focused on this. And so there's some key things that we're focused on. So one is safety. Safety is priority number 1 for us, and I want to convey our commitment to safety and ensuring that these sites are either buttoned up as much as possible, or that they're modified as much as possible to keep them safe, that they don't impede pedestrian access, that they don't cause broader traffic issues. And so if those items are popping up, I'd encourage you to let me, let Matt, or let someone on the project team know. Second is that we're going to do our absolute best to keep construction moving. As we evaluate subcontracts over the next few weeks, we're going to do our best to maintain the work that we recognize is most impactful to communities and to residents. Again, a lot of elected officials have reached out kind of with their priorities or the issues that they're getting some pressure on from their residents. And so we're going to work to continue to listen and work with our partners. Once we've kind of done that full evaluation, really looking at the next 30 days of where that work can continue or where work may potentially be delayed, I want to commit to you a real commitment to communication and to communicate that work in briefings like these with elected officials, to our CATs throughout the entire alignment. I think communication is just absolutely going to be key throughout this process so that folks understand what's happening in their neighborhood. I want to turn it over now to Matt Pollock, who's going to talk a bit about some of the activities of the project delivery team as they're really formulating the path forward, and discuss the team that we have working hard to deliver a high-quality project. Matt?
Thank you, Administrator. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Pollock. I am the Executive Director for Transit Development and Delivery. I've been on this team since June. I was brought on board by the Secretary and the Administrator to oversee the entire team and to deliver this project. And so that is what I am here to do. Kevin discussed two major areas that we're concentrating on at the delivery team level. Right now, we're concentrating on transition and continuing the project. With respect to transitioning the project, the state and PLTP, along with the design builder, that's PLTC, we're holding daily meetings to facilitate the transition of the project over to the state. Topics of those transition meetings include demobilization activities, protection of the work, and safe conditions of the sites, project status and the administrative documentation, and certainly subcontractor coordination and assignment. Outside of these transition meetings, the state's project delivery team is collecting information, establishing processes, staffing up, and we're taking actions to keep the Purple Line project moving forward. Those activities fall into three major categories. First is identifying the work that can continue under state management. At this time, we're looking at lots of different options, but the areas right now where we believe we are going to be continuing work includes design completion, the utility relocations, the wall work. There's lots of walls that are out there along the alignment that you see where you see a lot of posts or just the dirt being pushed back. We're going to complete those walls. And then we have a large amount of offsite equipment that is under manufacturing and test, and we have to keep all that work going as well. The second item that we're working on is coordinating with the existing subcontractors that are available to continue their work under state management. And at the same time, we need to establish backup plans for any subcontractors that won't be continuing. So this includes design firms, utility relocation firms, construction firms, the firms that are doing safety and quality assurance, and all of our equipment manufacturers as well. And then the third item, the third activity we're concentrating on is really putting in place the administrative staff, the processes, and the material necessary to pivot from managing where we were managing a single P3 contract. Now we're in a situation where we may be managing, in excess of 100 contracts as we move this project forward, pardon me. We're going to know more in the next 30 days regarding the path forward. There's been a lot going on, and our efforts up until last week have been focused quite broadly on the many different paths that this project could have headed down. With the litigation just finished last week, we have some clarity on our options to move the path forward, but there still are paths that we have to evaluate. With all the different paths, I am confident that the state has the right team in place that will help us get there. And I hope for your patience. We will communicate and we will take this project forward. Thank you, Administrator.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn, did you have anything else to add? We're going to go to Mr. Conklin next.
I'm good. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, very good. Mr. Conklin, did you have anything to add, please?
Sure. Just a couple things. Communication with the Purple Line team at MTA has been greatly improved since Mr. Pollock's arrival, and we very much appreciate the open lines of communication that have been established between our staff and the MTA folks that are trying to keep this on track. We don't envy the position that the state is in by any stretch. It's a very significant challenge for them to figure out how to keep this project moving in the environment they're in, and we thank them for their work to do that. Obviously, we are going to remain vigilant and watch the progress of this and make sure that things stay on track and communicate with the executive and council if we see any indication that that's not happening. And we are in ongoing conversations with Mr. Pollock and his team about the county financial stake in the project, both the direct contribution to the Purple Line and the county-funded projects that are being constructed as part of the overall project, the Bethesda South Entrance, Capitol Crescent Trail, Green Trail. And you saw in our CIP savings plan, we are delaying some of those payments to make sure that the county's investment in this is occurring at the time that the work is being completed and that we're not ahead of that process. So we've been asked a lot of times what we're doing, and what we're doing is giving the state the space they need to figure out the best path forward and manage all these complex relationships with the contractors, the designers, and the challenge of picking up partially completed work that somebody's going to have to do. So, like I mentioned, it's a very difficult task, and we're trying to be as supportive as we can and not create additional challenges for our partners at the state.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Because of the time constraint, we're going to stick to the 5-minute rule. And the first person is Vice President Hucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, gentlemen, for all your comments. It's very helpful. And I've been continually happy to hear your comments and Secretary Slater's comments about your ongoing commitment to this project, because there is a lot of public concern about that. Will the governor also be saying publicly that he's committed to finish this project and minimize future delay?
I'm not able to speak on behalf of the governor.
Sure, I think that would be helpful too. And Mr. Pollock, you said really it'll be only 30 days before you know the path forward, both whether you continue to pursue legal action and whether, if you don't, you move forward with another P3 or a traditional design build?
No, I didn't mean to infer that. I meant we're going to know more in 30 days.
We'll know more.
We're going to know more. Certainly, the legal action is coming down a separate path. I think 30 days is when we're going to have a better feel for what work we're going to be continuing in the near term. I think our long-term path is going to take a while.
I think Mr. Quinn had said 4 to 6 months for the question.
Yes.
Is that more accurate? Okay.
Yes, thanks for clarifying that.
Sure, it's for my benefit. Kevin, you had talked a little bit about the different, on one major consideration, whether you go forward with a P3 or a design build, more of a traditional route, involves the differences in the licensing, bonding, insurance requirements for state contractors versus contractors under where the PLTP is bearing the risk. Do you want to mention that?
Yes, I guess I'll just note, and Matt, feel free to chime in here, that the part of our evaluation of the subcontracts, I don't want to go into the details of it, but essentially, we need to take a look at the clauses that are in there. So, this is FTA funded. It's critical that it has all the appropriate FTA flow down clauses. It's critical that these contracts are structured in such a way that continue to protect the state versus between sort of two private entities. And so, we've got to really analyze every aspect of these subcontracts. Matt, your team is diving into that. Anything you want to
we've looked at pretty much all of the subcontracts. Most of them are fairly standard. There are a few that are unique, such as the car builder or the operations entities. But in general, we're fairly comfortable with the way that they are put together.
Great. Okay. There's been speculation about, subsequent to the court decision now, that you could return back to the table with PLTP. Is that still feasible, and why or why not?
Yeah, again, I'll just to some of the items I noted in my opening. We absolutely remain open to a fair and reasonable settlement. Those discussions are continuing, and so we absolutely remain committed to a settlement if that's a possibility.
And I appreciate, Matt, everything you said about communication being key, and that Mr. Conklin's comments that it's improved so much since you've been there. Can you talk about, for all the neighborhood associations that are listening right now, what you plan to do? How do you operationalize that communication in terms of meetings or emails or newsletters or what?
Well, I believe that we are circling around and getting ready for the next set of CAT meetings, the community activity meetings. They're probably going to be scheduled, I would guess, probably in the November timeframe to give us a little time to have the right information to share with them. Certainly we're available to answer any questions at any time. The only limitation will be, we don't want to speculate and give someone false hope. We want to be able to give them all the facts that we know.
Sure. I think even the sooner people know what you know, the better, even if it's not fully complete, because people will speculate and stress out and assume the worst, as you know, until they are provided some information from you, even if it's incomplete. I also finally wanted to ask about incumbent workers, something I asked Mr. Quinn, but obviously the Purple Line employs hundreds of workers on family supporting, mostly union contracts, including mostly workers of color. Ending their employment during a historic recession when jobs of this quality aren't really available is really unconscionable. Will the state and the designated contractors recommit to the reemployment of those workers ASAP under the same contracts? And where new contracts have to be written, will you require contractors and subcontractors to provide protections for incumbent workers?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I had some conversations with my procurement and my legal team about this. So, if you're asking about kind of bidder preference, where MTA is seeking a new company to kind of run the project in PLTC's place, we don't think there can be kind of a preference given to such a bidder based on incumbency. We can't kind of have that bidder preference in there. And as far as sort of requiring a company to hire from PLTC as part of the procurement, we don't think that's allowable either. So it's difficult for us to sort of mandate or require that someone do that in a new procurement. However,
under FTA rules, or
we're past the 5-minute rule, so please go ahead, please, Mr. Quinn.
Beg your pardon. So FTA does have guidelines around things like you can't have, say, a geographic preference. We don't have you can't put in clauses that say only Maryland businesses can go after this work. You've got to put it out there. And so, FTA guidance generally focuses on not having sort of these restrictive clauses. However, we think that individual workers will probably be kind of a different issue. So it may be that former workers will have an advantage to stay on the project kind of based on their individual project knowledge. And as for PLTC construction workers, we're certainly going to be talking to those workers and determine who wants to stay on. And essentially also, to the extent that MTA can assume certain subcontracts, the subcontractor construction workers will very likely keep working as those employees if the state were to then assume those subcontracts.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Hooker. Councilmember Glass.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, everybody, for joining this important conversation for the update. And over the last 21 months, since I've been serving on the council, I've been asking about the details of this project to determine the timeline and the budget. And given the situation that we're currently in, I'm going to continue focusing on that to make sure that we get this job done. And I'm going to continue asking questions so that we reach our shared goal of creating a transit system here in the DC metro area between Montgomery County and Prince George's County that encourages economic development and promotes environmental sustainability. So toward that goal, Mr. Quinn, you mentioned, I think it was Mr. Quinn, you mentioned the short-term management and construction of this project. And so there are a number of segments of this project, particularly in Montgomery County, but also Prince George's, that currently pose serious risk to pedestrians and others who are in that area, just trying to manage their daily life. So, some of those areas are Wayne Avenue and Piney Branch Road, and and other areas. And so can you share with us the prioritization regarding the short-term work that's going to be done and how some of these other factors will be mitigated?
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, I think you could probably speak more to our our construction inspectors and their process of evaluating this, and the staff that I know assigned to focus specifically on pedestrian access. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually today, our construction staff and PLTC's construction staff, they're walking the entire alignment to look at every piece of construction and to discuss what PLT's plans are for making each site safe and available, not only for keeping people away, but for areas where people have to, tread along those areas for making the access safe. And so we expect out of today's walkthrough that there will be, mostly agreement on what's going forward, but there will be some additional discussion where areas where perhaps the state feels that, additional work needs to be done before PLTC fully transition off and demobilizes.
Well, thank you for that update. And Mr. Pollock, I think that is a very good use of everyone's time to actually walk across the entire project to see what residents and businesses are facing as work has ceased. And so I look forward to getting an update on that and letting us know what your team, their assessment is and how best to proceed. And so while they'll be walking across the two counties, I have a question for Director Conklin. As part of the broader Purple Line project, we know that Montgomery County is fully vested in revitalization updates. That the county is requesting revitalization updates, and like with the Capitol Crescent Trail and the new Bethesda elevator and also the Green Trail in Silver Spring, and that work was supposed to be done by the concessionaire and partners. And so Director Conklin, what are we going to do here in Montgomery County with our important side projects?
Well, that's a good question. At this time, those projects are all covered by a memorandum of understanding between MDOT MTA and the county for execution as part of this project. It's our expectation that the state will continue to work to deliver them coincident with the Purple Line. It would be very difficult to break that work out. They're in close proximity, and a lot of the dependencies between structures and other elements to do it separately would be difficult for us to do. Ultimately, we'll have to see how Matt and Kevin's work to get this back underway goes, and if we have to make difficult decisions to pull that work out, we can have that. But like I said, they're so intertwined that it would be difficult to do that. So we are in the position that we all are, hoping that this gets resolved and construction proceeds on the entirety of the work under one set of project management and leadership, so that the work is coordinated.
Right. Intertwined is a good word, and so keep us posted as we try to untangle the web that has been created. And the last question, given the time constraints, and I think Committee Chair Hucker alluded to this, but I'll be a little more explicit. Residents are contacting me on a daily basis about these problems, and Mr. Pollock, the walkthrough that you all are going to do will help with that assessment. But who do we refer constituents to if they have issues regarding any of the sites that are currently just left idle?
I would certainly welcome any contact that people want to have. I don't know if my email address and work phone number are out there, but certainly, I am happy to be a point of contact. We have a communications team that are already making that outreach, but point of contact can be me, absolutely.
Sure, and so I'll share that with my team and others.
Yes, please.
So thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollock, for being here. Mr. Conklin, of course, always good to see you. I'll jump right in because I have limited time. The ruling, I just want to make sure I understood your position and the governor's position. You know, the ruling was not kind in that all of the arguments that were made by the state were rejected, and at there was not agreement with your position. Is it the intention of you all to move forward with those same arguments to appeal, or what is the intention in the strategy, and what can you say about that?
I can't say much. I think as it relates to the litigation that took place, yeah, I think we have a different interpretation of the contract than PLTP and PLTC have. And in terms of our litigation strategy going forward, honestly, I can't say much about it.
One of the arguments that was made by you was that it would cause irreparable harm because MDOT doesn't have the expertise, the time, money, or the training in house to take over the project. Is that still your position?
My position is that sitting here today, we have to ramp up. Sitting here today, no, we have a limited staff and limited resources. That's not to say we can't get there, and we're going to have to get there, and we're committed to getting there. So we're, I think you heard Matt, talk a bit about, starting to augment our staff and our ability to manage construction and manage contracts, and so we're committed to doing that.
Okay, if you can't bring the marriage back together, if you have to, either way, you're going to plan and ramp up to do that.
That's exactly right.
That was one of the concerns that I had, and I know other colleagues have had, about the time period between the injunction and now, whether there was adequate or any transition planning, and it was pointed out that there wasn't. In that, I guess we thought we were going to win the case. I don't know what the logic was, but could you just answer why there was not better transition planning? So we're at the point now where people are just going to be potentially looking at these sites and nothing's going to happen, and we're sitting here with not the expertise or the ability to move things forward.
Yeah, I think so. PLTP, as noted in the case, had submitted a draft transition plan, which was under their sort of the plan noted in the P3 agreement under the concessionaire default or for extended delay. I think we had a very different take on it, that they were abandoning the project, and so I think our point was that to participate in transition plan meetings would be to participate in, I think, what we felt was an inappropriate abandonment of the project.
As opposed to just realizing that you could have lost, which was what happened. You thought that would weaken your position, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that there's a sense that it could weaken our position, and our position was just as they had submitted a default notice to us, and we weren't participating in transition plan meetings. Our expectation was we had issued a default notice to them, and we expected them to cure. They were under a requirement to cure, and so they refused to participate in cure meetings.
Okay. I appreciate that. I just had limited time. I have two other questions. The decision to move forward with a P3 model or to build the expertise in-house, which you said that you're working to do, which I think is proper planning in case of any eventuality. Is there a preference from the governor or from your office? Are we committed to this P3 model, or is that what you think is the path forward?
I think the P3 model has many benefits, and in the long term, the contract has several options related to resoliciting it as a P3. But ultimately, I guess I'd say that that longer term plan and longer term strategy is still under development. To keep it as a P3, there's a lot of pieces to this. So you have the short-term construction piece that's going on right now, and then but you also do have the operations and maintenance. And so if you don't remarket it as a P3 and say you just do the design build, you still have to figure out that operations and maintenance piece. And there are transit systems around the country that they do this separately. They do a design build piece and then they market out to do a procurement for a separate firm to come in and operate thing like that. That has happened.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, I know I could just say one last sentence, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I just think we need to reevaluate that, especially in light of 270 and 495. Imagine this failing in that type of project. There'll be an absolute disaster. This is already a disaster. And the county, particularly Montgomery County, but none of the counties, Prince George's, should have to pay another dime for this project, and the governor needs to state that it should move forward. So I know you're working hard. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you so much for this briefing, Mr. Quinn, Pollock, and Mr. Conklin. A lot of my questions have been answered, but I guess I just want to confirm what I heard so we can appropriately talk to our constituents. So what you're saying is that in the next 30 days, you will have a better understanding of some of the components of the path forward, but it will take approximately 6 months to begin to appropriately, I guess, deploy whatever strategy you plan to deploy to get this done?
No, I'd say over the next 30 days, we will have a better understanding of the construction work that will continue or that may be delayed, that we can communicate, say, to you and to your constituents that, hey, in your neighborhood, this is the segment that we're able to keep going, or maybe this is the segment that had been planned to start in December that now is going to start in, I don't know, March. I'm kind of making up dates here, but I think we'll be able to convey that a lot more clearly. I think what some of the questions we're getting at was sort of the longer term strategy, which I do think is more of a 4 to 6 months of a, what does this look like in terms of a reprocurement, or what that looks like. So I think that's what we're getting at. Matt, did I capture that appropriately?
Yes, and so I think in between that, 30 days where we have more details and the 6 months where we feel more comfortable with the long-term plan, it's our intent that there will be construction activities going on.
Yes.
So it's not a nothing on the ground for 6 months.
And you will be able to then, of course, publish through your websites or anything like that, updates so that constituents understand what are the sites that are going to have to be secured because nothing is happening, and what are the sites that will have some construction moving forward in the short term, right?
Yes, absolutely. Just a quick note. So, I noted earlier, I'm not an attorney. My background is in transit planning, and my career started for the first many years as a community planner. And so, the whole community side and community impacts is really, really important to me, and the way that we convey that and convey it clearly. I've really been pushing the team, and Matt's been pushing the team to push for, graphic elements that folks can understand, so that you can see graphically kind of what's going on in specific neighborhoods, and to break that up not just into segments, but by neighborhoods, by council districts. I want to be sure that we can really communicate to everybody very clearly that work that's going to continue. So that's really important to me. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I'm stating the obvious, but it is so disheartening to be in this position, specifically when you have these two counties, Prince George's County and Montgomery County, who are, such important counties for the state in general when it comes to economic development. And this is so tied to that. And it is, I have to say, I've heard from constituents say, wow, I never thought I would see something like this happening here in Montgomery County. Folks that maybe come from other countries where there is kind of a tradition where, big projects get started and then they're like abandoned. And of course, I'm not saying that this is what's happening here, but it is a very sore sight to have to witness so much that started to happen, and now things are just not occurring. And so, of course, we stand ready to partner with you and work with you. But as some of my colleagues have said, I think the governor also needs to put forth some clear statements about how he is going to own this major issue and how we're going to come out at the other side. He has spoken so eloquently about the importance of economic development and really getting Maryland, ahead in that way. And so again, this is a pivotal project for that. And I do look forward to hearing more from him in terms of specific support and commitment to getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollock and Mr. Conklin. Nobody wants to be here right now having this conversation, and I just want to make that very clear, and appreciate a lot of the comments and questions that were asked. And I will say, as Councilmember Jawando noted, that lawsuit was, in the ruling, was not kind at all to the state. But I just want to be clear as well. I am hoping that the future bids are not kind to the concessionaire, because what is absolutely unacceptable here is a firm that committed to doing work, to delivering a project, is abandoning its obligations. And, finding loopholes in contracts and a deal that could have perhaps been stronger is fine, but commitments made should be commitments kept. And this is a concessionaire that is abandoning its project, and I hope that that is well known far and wide, because I imagine this isn't the last project that the companies bid on, and their actions here should be well known and should be taken with a deep degree of caution, and I hope it has a significant impact. I appreciate the comments about the pedestrian safety issues that Councilmember Glass mentioned. I'm glad that you were going to be walking this project. I'm happy to join you in any part of that in and along my district, because we all hear about these issues a lot. We walk them a lot, and I think it's important to remember, and I hope that you will acknowledge that this construction has taken away pedestrian access, has taken away trail access, has taken away safe opportunities for our residents. And it was a short-term pain with the promise of long-term significant gain. And we need to mitigate that short-term pain right now, as this is indefinitely worked through, and make sure that the long-term gain comes through as promised, as quickly as possible without any further delay. And I will just say that I have yet to meet a resident who feels very strongly about who builds this.
Yeah.
The Purple Line needs to be built. Even those who might have had concerns with different aspects of this, the current situation is unacceptable. Having holes in the community where we should have one of the most important connectors within and among our communities is not acceptable, and so we need to make that happen. So just a few questions. You mentioned, the next 30 days, you're going to figure out the short-term construction needs, what is going to continue, what is going to be delayed. 6 months you feel it's going to take in order to make a long-term decision on how to proceed with the project. Is that an accurate timeline based on, because a few things have been said, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Is that accurate, Mr. Quinn?
Yeah, I'd say 4 to 6 months. I think some of it depends on the path that the litigation takes. And so I don't want to speculate too much about that, but yes, I think generally your timeline is correct.
Okay, and so it seems to me there's three options. One is you somehow find a fair and reasonable settlement after this ruling, and somehow that's able to be reconciled. I think it seems unlikely, but possible at this point. Number two would be the state takes over the project entirely and ramps up, as you had said before, and brings in-house the expertise. Number three would be rebidding in some form or fashion a new public-private partnership, either for the construction, the design build, or for the total project as it was previously constructed. Those are the three?
I think that's accurate. I think the one nuance I'd put on that is that it could be somewhat of a combination of some of those. So it could be a combination of the state does some of the management of construction in the short term while we re-procure it in the long term. So it could be kind of a 2 and 3. It could be we reach a settlement and maybe some pieces of it stay and we still re-procure some pieces of it, sort of a 1 and 3 combo. I think there's some permutations in there. And again, I think part of that depends also on the litigation, but there's lots of paths, lots of kind of permutations this could take in the long term.
Has the state analyzed the cost implications and the time implications in terms of any potential delays of delivering the project that has already been delayed based on the different options that are available, whether it's a settlement, whether it's the state taking on the project, or whether it's being rebid, excuse me?
Yeah. Under each of the scenarios, we've definitely taken a look at those timelines and any potential delays that could happen to the project.
And could we expect that to be made public at any point?
Yeah, I think as we look to what construction, a lot depends on, again, on the path this could take. How much work we're able to keep going. If the state's able to keep a really high level of work going, that obviously reduces delay. A lot of that depends on those evaluations of those subcontractors, the assignment of the subcontractors. And so I don't think we're at a point where we can kind of talk about exactly what that looks like. But again, in the next 30 days, and then in the next 4 to 6 months, as we look at that longer term procurement strategy, I think we'll have a better answer to your question.
I'm out of time. I just hope that the public will be shared that information specifically. What are the options, how much they're going to cost, who's going to pay for them, and when they're going to be delivered specifically, because this is too important a project. We have too much invested in this project for the public not to know exactly what the options are, who's going to bear the cost for them, and when they're going to be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Friedson. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Great questions. First of all, I just want to say overall, we haven't heard a lot from the governor. He's left it to the departments to speak. And I just want to say, the governor's not a passenger on this. He's driving this train, and we need him to drive this train, take control of the situation, and make sure his top team is spending the time that's needed. Secondly, it sounds like we're into 4 to 6 months of potentially kind of a limbo as other issues are worked out. No one's saying that that's exactly what's going to happen, but it sounds very possible. So in that time, we've got to secure the construction sites and address the staging areas and all of those issues. And it sounds like that is not something that needs to wait 30 days, to then decide what to do and then have a couple more months before something happens. So could we have from you, very prompt follow-up as to how you'll immediately proceed, for the indefinite short term, where you can reopen access to things, how to clear up, pedestrian access, all of the issues that are resolved, need to be resolved. How can we be sure that you will be able to quickly follow up on those items, please?
Sure. So I think what you've outlined is exactly what we're looking to try to have kind of nailed down in the next 30 days. And, Matt and I are happy to come back to this group and do a more detailed presentation of that work.
So you're looking at all the sites in the next 30 days to evaluate what changes need to happen, or can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think over the next 30 days, we're taking a look at the entire alignment, where there is construction ongoing that the state can potentially come in and manage. Part of that evaluation is a sort of a legal evaluation of the subcontracts that the state may be able to manage. I think part of that is a staffing capacity of taking a look at our capacity to manage those projects right now, as well as the ramp up of state resources to manage that work. But I think, again, that's what we're looking to sort of nail down in the next 30 days, and to be able to look at each of you and say segment by segment, district by district, here's the work that's going to proceed over the next few months, over the next year, and then again, I think we're looking at a few more months to really nail down what sort of the longer term project delivery strategy is going to be. But right now, the focus is absolutely how to keep construction moving along the corridor and where that is going to be able to continue.
Okay, and I know, Matt, you'll be in touch with Chris Conklin, our DOT director, as we proceed on all of those sites, and the county can follow up with you. Last thing I want to say is just, the Purple Line is essential for the future of this county, and it builds the kind of transportation infrastructure that we need. None of that has really changed. It will deliver incredible economic benefits. We'll be able to build terrific communities all along the route. It's going to connect the east and the west. It's going to be part of an integrated region. It even connects to the MARC. It connects the whole state into parts of Montgomery County. It just, the value in this project can't be understated. And the sooner we deliver it, the sooner we get those benefits, accelerating into our economy and into our communities. And so it has faced many dark hours in the past, and we're gonna pull this through once again. But no doubt, this is bitterly disappointing. I think Councilmember Navarro said disheartening. It is, and we've got to get this done. So we need the governor to step up and really assert strong leadership here, and let's get this project finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
So I'm not going to belabor a lot of the points that you've already heard, but let me just stress again from another council member whose district doesn't touch any of those areas, but certainly one that still benefits, because at the end of the day, as folks connect to mass transit, it affects all of us in this county and, quite frankly, in this region. And so from that perspective, it is incredibly important for us to ensure that mass transit modality continues in an effective way, and also gives confidence to our constituents, right? Their faith in government. And when you look at the comments that all of the articles, whether it's Washington Post or Bethesda Bee, when we have missteps like this, what it does is it erodes constituent confidence in government's ability to be able to manage projects. And now, in this case, I will just say this. There's been a lot of concern, and rightfully so. People are already economically stressed. And so to then have something like this looming, where we're talking about tens of millions, not hundreds of millions of dollars potential in terms of what may happen and who may be on the hook, folks are starting to ask the questions about who's going to have to pay for that. And I think it's important for the governor and for the department to come out and tell people who is going to be on the hook for this responsibility. And I know that's not something that we know right now, because we don't even know what the costs are. And so I understand that. I accept that answer. However, as quickly as possible, we need to make sure that that information is out there so that folks understand. And let me be very clear, Montgomery County has been supportive of this project when you came and asked us for additional funds. You came to us, you asked Prince George's, and we ponied up. Our constituents paid at the gate and said, we believe in this project, it's important for us, we want this to happen. I don't think it's fair to come back to our constituents again and ask again, based on, again, some of the missteps. And I do agree with Councilmember Friedson and what he said. I mean, there's a concessionaire who I believe has taken advantage of a situation and really should be doing the best for what we want to see happen for this region, for this state. And that's unfortunate. But that being said, we've got to move forward. And it's my hope that the governor will certainly step up and do what he needs to do to ensure that the responsibility is not spread out again to jurisdictions that continue to struggle and are doing the right thing. I mean, Montgomery County hasn't done anything wrong in the sense of how this happened. And so from that perspective, therefore, shouldn't be held liable when it comes to bearing the financial burdens associated with some of those missteps. And so I'm not sure if you have anything, Mr. Quinn. I see you nodding. Mr. Pollock, I see you nodding. But it's good, again, to hear from the department that is understood and heard, because constituents are watching, they're listening, and they want to hear the same thing.
Thank you. No comments. Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Rice. Was there anything else, or? Councilmember Rice, was there anything else?
No, not for me. I
Okay.
was just going to wait and see if Mr. Quinn or Ms. Pollock was going to
Yeah.
respond. But
Sorry,
it's Mr. Quinn.
I do,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so I appreciate all your comments, and I think you're right on. You know, I will note that, you know, I think the governor has very much stepped up in support of this project. You know, he was an advocate for getting the federal funding to FFGA for this project. There's significant state dollars and resources that have been spent to date on this project. And you know, this project certainly has his commitment, and I think it's demonstrated here in us noting, you know, really our commitment, the state's commitment to getting this job done. And I think your point about communicating with residents again is right on. You know, I know the emails and phone calls I'm getting. I don't represent the areas you represent, and so I can only imagine the phone calls and emails you're getting. And so I respect 100% what you're saying, and as soon as we're able to really communicate that path forward, that game plan, we will absolutely do that.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Albernaz. Might we add, we're at 9:58:19, Mr. Quinn, so we're coming pretty close to time frame. Councilmember Albernaz.
I'll come in under. So as an optimist myself, I appreciate the presentation that optimistically looks at moving this project forward despite the challenges that my colleagues have articulated so well. But I do need to join the echo of comments that while I appreciate the optimistic assurance that this project will move forward by the staff who are most directly associated with this project, it's critical for the governor to make that same statement. There are organizations and communities who have been opposed to this project that smell blood in the water and are hoping that this will fall through. And I think they and many others, including especially those that support this project, need to hear from the governor that this will move forward. This is a punch in the gut, maybe even a low blow, but it is going to move forward. And obviously we need to recognize the elephant in the room, which is it's happening. This is all happening at the worst possible time. The economic outlook for the county and the state look bleak, to say the least, from a financial perspective. And this will impact other projects, both at the county and state level. And so we need to begin the very painful process of level setting expectations, a term we hear a lot around here, but to make sure our communities understand that this project will move forward, but not without cost under the current circumstances. And this council stands ready to support, as you heard from all of my colleagues, in any way we can to both communicate to our communities, and we really need to do more to communicate to our multicultural communities what's going on, because people are exasperated, confused, frustrated, and frankly angry. And so that is critically important moving forward. So with that, I'll defer back to you, Mr. President. No need to comment, you've already done so. But please, if the governor could make a statement, it would help all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Mr. Quinn and Mr. Pollock, we did want to note that we came in on time. I just want you to know that it's 10 o'clock. So I just as a friendly nudge. But I did want to note that, you know, there is concern about the whole process for P3s. This does not touch my area as well, the Purple Line. It certainly will affect my area because anyone riding the Metro could certainly use the Purple Line, and anyone going to University of Maryland could certainly use the Purple Line. So it certainly could affect their area. But we are concerned about the whole P3 situation for 270 and 495. My area, 270 is where it's affected. So please keep that in mind as well. And with that, thank you both for and Mr. Conklin. We don't want to take Mr. Conklin for granted here, but he certainly is a major part for Montgomery County on this project. Thank you all for being with us, and we sincerely appreciate your time, commitment, and working with us so that we can be very pleased that this project will be completed. Thank you very much.